Alright, so I'm back with the UFC 311, 7 things we learned, and man, we learned a lot last night, so let's get right into it. In my opinion, the most exciting fight going into it was the Merab versus Umar fight. This was what I was looking forward to most. This is the one where I knew we were really going to learn about just how good Umar is and just how good Merab is, and man, we sure learned a lot in this one. I think the main takeaway from this, Merab is undisputedly the bantamweight GOAT at this point. Now, we'll get into his performance last night, but let's just look at his resume. His latest wins, Umar Nurmagomedov, Sean O'Malley, Henry Cejudo, Piotr Jan, Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes, and Cody Stamann. Now, I know at some of the higher weight classes it's easier to rack up wins like that, but in the lower weight classes in flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, that is almost unheard of. The only guy that's even starting to build a resume like that is Ilya Topuria. A guy like Volkanovski built a resume like that, maybe even Max Holloway. But when you look at the names on here, this is just ridiculous. Umar Nurmagomedov, undefeated, super well-rounded prospect, a guy that is almost 100% going to be a champion at some point in his career. Sean O'Malley, former champion, one of the best strikers ever in the UFC. Henry Cejudo, former double champ, Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, just picked him up, slammed him down, beat him easily. Piotr Jan, former and hopefully future champion. Jose Aldo, former champion, legend of the sport. Marlon Moraes, former title contender, another really, really good guy at the time. And then Cody Stamann, just kind of a staple in that bantamweight top 10, top 15 for a long time. Now, let's talk about what exactly he did last night. In the first two rounds, Umar showed us just how good he is. He showed us that he's well rounded, as we already knew, but we saw that he's good enough to beat Merab despite the pressure in the first two rounds. Now, in the third round, we saw that start to crack. We saw, like everybody else, Merab's pace started to finally take a toll on Umar, and once that happened, it was done. Merab seemed to get more and more into the fight as the rounds go on. As Umar starts to slip out of the fight, we saw Merab dancing around. We saw Merab emoting. Saw him just throwing him around, humiliating him. And Umar just started to crack while Merab just started to build. And wow, man, that was incredibly impressive performance from Merab. Who else would you even call the bantamweight goat at this point? Dominic Cruz? No, I mean, he has a good record, a lot of good old wins, but that just doesn't compare to Merab's record. Some of these guys are probably all like top 20 skill level guys in the UFC, which sounds crazy, but is it not true? Umar, Sean O'Malley, Henry Cejudo, Piotr Jan, Jose Aldo, all of those guys are like top 20, top 30 skill, like based on purely skill, maybe ever in the UFC. That might be crazy, but at least top 50, which is an insane run of wins. And he's just showing them something they've never seen before with the cardio. I think the only way that this guy's going to be beaten is when his cardio starts to drop off, when he starts to accumulate more and more injuries. This isn't a young guy anymore, especially at bantamweight, but for now, I don't see who beats him. Alright, let's move on. You're not going to be able to fluke a win against Islam Makhachev. Pretty much nobody really predicted Renato Moicano to win this, and there really wasn't even much talk about he may be able to fluke a knockout, something like that, because he doesn't have all that much power on the feet. But I think this fight just proved it's going to take more than a lucky chance, a bit of an upset, like a bit of a confusion with the card to knock Islam Makhachev off of his pound-for-pound number one spot. Now, when the fight did start, I genuinely thought Renato Moicano knocked Islam down. People say it was a slip, but every time I've seen it, it genuinely looks like a knockdown to me. Islam Makhachev's kind of leaning in for some strikes, and then he ends up going backwards. Maybe that was like some evasive maneuvers from him, some head movement that he kind of slipped on, but I do think Renato Moicano clipped him there. Now, that's not to say that Renato Moicano was on pace to win that fight, because I think at any point in the fight, when Islam decided to take him down and submit him, as he showed us, he did have that ability. I think it's going to take a guy that's genuinely better than Islam, genuinely more dangerous than him to beat him. We're not going to get a Charles Oliveira fluke. We're probably not going to get an Arman Sarukian fluke. I wouldn't bet on it. I think our best chance to beat Islam Makhachev is Ilia Topuria. He's just that good, deservedly pound for pound number one, and pretty secure there. Don't bet on anybody beating him anytime soon, unless it's Ilya. Alright, moving on. I want to say Jiri Prochazka is better than he's ever been, better than we've ever seen him in the UFC. And we really haven't seen him all that much when it comes down to it. His first real elite performances were against Volkan Ozdemir and Dominic Reyes, but both of those fights ended pretty quickly, although he was rocked in both of those fights. Jiri gets rocked in almost every one of his fights. And then lately, our latest impression of Jiri is him getting knocked out twice by Alex Pereira. Kind of 3 times. He kind of got knocked out twice in his last fight against him. But when you think about it, Alex Pereira is really the only guy to have been able to beat Prochazka lately. I know he took some losses before his UFC career, but I genuinely think this is the best we've ever seen him. Better than he was in the Pereira fights. Better than he was against Reyes or Ozdemir or Rakic. He looked amazing against Jamahal Hill. His defense was on point. I know he talked in his post-fight press conference about keeping those hands up, but I think what was more impactful in his game today, or last night rather, was his head movement. He was able to slip a lot of shots, and off those slips, he was landing counters. It was a bit of a counter that eventually did put Jamahal Hill out after Jiri had knocked him down a couple times. I believe it's like a good straight right and then kind of a tight right hook that put him out pretty bad. Followed up a little bit. Good stoppage. Jiri looks great. Now, he's in a bit of a weird situation because he's not going to get that Pereira fight. But Pereira did just get booked against Ankalaev. If Ankalaev's able to beat Pereira soundly and Jiri is ready to step up and fight Pereira before Alex is ready to come back, because I'm sure he would get an immediate rematch if he does lose to Magomed. I think Jiri versus Magomed is actually an amazing matchup because Jiri is known to have more of that wrestling, grappling base than a guy like Pereira, and he's extremely dangerous in the striking. I think Jiri versus Magomed is actually a dream matchup, just like Jiri versus Jamahal Hill was. And man, that was a fun fight. Both those guys looked pretty good, but Jiri just kind of outskilled and outdangered Jamahal Hill in moments. Yeah, Jiri looks good. Alright, and then my next point. Sometime in the future, Jailton Almeida will fight Aspinall. That is something we will 100% see. Now, I don't think that will be either of their next fight. I'm hoping we can do Aspinall versus Jones. But maybe in the meantime, we do Almeida versus Volkov or Almeida versus Gane. Regardless, let's look at this top 10 right now. Not the full top 10, but just down to Almeida. We got Jon Jones as champion. Aspinall as interim. Gane up there. Volkov up there. Pavlovich, Blades, and Almeida. Now, Almeida already fought Blades. I don't think we're going to see that rematch, especially because Blades does have a fight booked. I don't think we'll see him versus Pavlovich, but it's a possibility. Gane, also a possibility, but I don't think Dana and the UFC want to feed Gane to a guy that they don't like, that is considered boring, that would also likely beat him the same way Jon Jones beat Gane. I could see him getting Pavlovich, to be honest, maybe even Volkov in a title eliminator, but regardless, I think one win, then a title fight for Jailton Almeida, considering that after Aspinall fights Jon Jones or doesn't fight Jon Jones, regardless, who's left for him? It's either Gane coming off of what should have been a loss or one of these guys that he's already beaten. So I think Almeida's a good test, especially in the grappling, and if nothing else, it's a good highlight KO to add to the resume of Tom Aspinall. But I think the most interesting thing about Jailton Almeida's fight last night was that he did clip Sergey Spivak on the feet. He was able to make himself look like a danger on the feet, which will make him more appealing to the UFC, more promotable. So, good for him. I think he's a great prospect in the division. Not really a prospect. He's 34 and has a bunch of ranked wins. But he is a guy that will fight for the belt eventually. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Kevin Holland, you're done, man. Not as in cut from the UFC done, but never going to be ranked again at middleweight, at welterweight, in my opinion. This guy's kind of quietly gone 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Just lost to De Ritter by submission. TKO to Delidze. He did beat Oleksiejczuk, which is actually a good win, But in my opinion, man, like Oleksiejczuk came so close to finishing him. That really wasn't the greatest win from Kevin Holland, although Oleksiejczuk is a pretty decent opponent. He did get cut after that, but before that, lost in the striking to MVP, outstruck soundly. Before that, outstruck soundly by Jack Della Maddalena. So if you're getting outstruck by ranked level fighters who are strikers, and then you're getting outgrappled by ranked level grapplers, and you don't have that heart, you don't have any separating factor that's going to put you above your skill level, what do you have, man? I like Kevin Holland. I like how active he is. That's my favorite attribute in a fighter, but just seems like his heart isn't in it anymore. But that's not taking anything away from Reinier de Ridder, who made it look easy last night. Came out, just skipped through the striking, went straight into the takedown, took him down pretty easily, worked his way to the submission, and he got it. So Reinier de Ridder is legit, at least a ranked level UFC middleweight, which is good, proving himself after being a double champion in one, which I think is a bit of an underrated MMA promotion. I think their top guys are legit. I hope we do see Reinier de Ridder working his way up the rankings because he's super fun, especially as a grappler. And I think this may be a hot take, but I don't know who beats him aside from Dricus du Plessis and Hamzat. We could see Anthony Hernandez able to kind of shuck off the wrestling and beat him with pace. Maybe a guy like Israel Adesanya finishes him in the striking, but I think he has a chance, a decent chance against everybody except Hamzat and Dricus. Yeah, let me amend that statement. I do think there are people that beat him, but the only people I think he has no chance against are Dricus and Hamzat. I think he has a chance against Izzy. I think he has a chance against Imavov. He's just that elite of a grappling at middleweight where there's not all that much grappling. Alright, and then unfortunately for a lot of people, Talbott, man, you're years away from the rankings. That's what he proved last night. Who really expected him to go out there and have zero concept of takedown defense? Very little concept of grappling defense, it looked like. And he just looked shocked from the get-go when Raoni Barcelos was able to take him down easily and threaten him badly with the rear naked choke. Man, Payne Talbott just looked lost on the ground, which we didn't expect from a guy that has been training for so long. This is one of those new generation guys that has been training since they were a kid. They know jiu-jitsu in and out, supposedly. They know the striking, but he really got exposed badly there, and it's going to take years for him to build up his stock again. This guy is booted back, 3 or 4 fights away from the rankings, which is unfortunate for him. He's still young, still 26, but he regressed a lot in the mind of the public last night, and deservedly so, man. If you're not going to be able to if you're not going to be able to defend takedowns, and you're not going to be able to get back up from the ground or even defend yourself on the ground, you have no chance in the rankings. You got killers like Merab, Umar at the top. They would finish him within 30 seconds. So Talbott, take some time off, in my opinion. Work on that wrestling, work on that anti-grappling, takedown defense, and not to mention when he was stood back up, his striking didn't look all that dangerous. Now, a lot of that is kind of the shock of losing, the shock and tiredness of being taken down over and over again, but you've got a lot to work on, Payne Talbott. Maybe an attitude issue too. I wish we would have seen more from him when he knew he was going to lose, unless he did something drastic, but he's still young. He still has time. I think he still has a lot of talent. So not time to give up on this guy, but definitely time to put it on the back burner, really work on the basics, fundamentals, get yourself back in the game. You're young, you have time. Alright, then the last thing I wanted to talk about, I think Grant Dawson has proven himself that he is in and around the top 5 grapplers at light heavyweight. So let's look at what there is. We've got number 1, undisputedly, Islam Makhachev. Number 2, number 3, kind of disputed, but we did see Sarukian beat him, so we're going to go Sarukian, then Oliveira. That's the undisputed top 3 grapplers at lightweight. But when we're looking down that list to the number 4, 5, and 6, I think it's between Grant Dawson, Mateusz Gamrot, and Beneil Dariush. Throw Moicano in there too, maybe. But I think it's a mix-up right there. Grant Dawson is just a level away from championship level. I would consider all 3 of those guys elite, but they're not on that level of Oliveira, Sarukian, and Makhachev. Grant Dawson had kind of a bit of a boring performance last night, but he still proved a lot. He was able to control pretty much the entire fight with the grappling, stay on top. He doesn't do the most damage from that position, which is kind of hurting him in this grappling ranking, but he does have that control and he's able to win fights with it. So that's impressive in its own right. And yeah, that's the 7 things we learned from UFC 311. That was an amazing card. I enjoyed it a lot. We've got a lot more coming up, so let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, like and subscribe if you like the content. There will be more of it, and have a great day.